Hamas's European political wing, if you can call it that, which I think you can, the government of Norway, has been very clear on where it stands over the past many years, but more so since October 7th, the success of the military wing of Hamas inspired the state of Norway to increase its funding to UNRWA, who was involved in those attacks, to um, recognize officially a Palestinian state and encourage others to do so, and to announce that they will arrest Netanyahu and Gallant if they show up in Norway, if arrest warrants have been issued, and they have taken some steps to make sure that happens as well. Israel, uh, as Israel does when it's attacked militarily, also diplomatically, it takes Israel a while, and then it doesn't fully retaliate, but it has begun to retaliate a little bit in recent days. Announcing that funds that are moved through Norway or held by Norway that are supposed to go to the not PLO, what's it called now? Palestinian Authority, are no longer going to be sent through Norway or held by Norway, and they're looking for a different country for that purpose, and that they will no longer give diplomatic immunity to eight Norwegian diplomats in Israel, whose sole job it is to work with the Palestinians. So these are baby steps, or as Norway calls them, extreme steps. I don't know if anybody in Norway used that word about October 7th, but who cares? And yeah, this is I want to think this is somewhere along the lines of the boldness, slight boldness that we've seen from Israel, both militarily and diplomatically in recent months. Certainly boldness compared to what we saw previously. Is it? We'll discuss today and probably not get an answer, but at least attempt. Welcome to the Daily Objective, Daniel. You're from Europe. Your, your
Yeah,
thoughts on Norway?
so Europe is my favorite country, so I know a lot about it. Well, maybe to start off, I'll tell you guys about how, we come out with the topics, or at least how I hear, what we're gonna talk about. So usually I wake up and I have a message from Razi like, this is what we're doing for today. And when I saw, and I don't immediately go into it because I just woke up, but I usually see the message. So I've seen, I've seen the title, Israel retaliates against Norway, good title. And I've seen a little bit of the news. And my impression first was Israel basically kicked out all diplomats or basically all relations with Norway. And that's what I was kind of going into it. Then I've read the actual story a bit later. And I was a bit disappointed. I think it's still good. So just to maybe do specifically what happened. So 8 diplomats in Tel Aviv, because of course Norway doesn't have embassy in Jerusalem. 8 diplomats in Tel Aviv solely focused on representing Oslo to Ramallah got their diplomatic status revoked. So there is still embassy in Tel Aviv. They still are basically continuing to the work, but 8 people that whose job was specifically to in a sense communicate with the Palestinian Authority have been kicked out or have their basically diplomatic status be revoked. The Israeli foreign minister says there is a price for anti-Israel behavior. He was citing, for one, the Norway's recognition of the Palestinian statehood, which of course comes after October 7, after we've seen what the Palestinian people are about. That's when they get recognized. So Norway and I think also Spain and Ireland have recognized the Palestinian statehood. Again, rewarding them, basically telling Palestinians the only time we care about you is when you commit violence. So, in incentives matter, and these incentives are telling Palestinians, yes, violence works, and violence will work for you, especially. So that's why we've seen, of course, Hamas is becoming more popular, and also more radical Palestinian parts are becoming more popular because they've seen it works. The European countries will reward you for this. And Norway, of course, has responded, and they actually they use the word extreme, but not when it comes to October 7. So Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs said this is an extreme act that primarily affects our ability to help the Palestinian population. And I think he's right. Yes, this is going to affect your ability to help the Palestinian population, because that is not the population you should be helping. These are people who, so when it comes to specifically the Palestinian Authority, they are not the ones who have committed October 7, but it's not like the areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority are some sort of, you know, peace loving people, or the Palestinians that are peace loving, who just cannot wait for Hamas to, they cannot wait for Israel to get rid of Hamas so they can peacefully coexist with Israel. We've had many episodes, we've seen many episodes, on the street interviews, but if those are not enough for you, which they shouldn't be, just a few people talking should be enough. But we've seen the polls, people in the Palestinian Authority controlled territories, specifically, for example, Ramallah, are supportive of October 7. They don't think it was a wrong decision. Hamas actually has higher support in the West Bank than it does in the Hamas itself. So again, while you might say specifically the Palestinians in the West Bank are not the ones who have committed October 7th, it's not like they disagree with it. And again, it's not like there is no terrorism coming out of these areas. So again, it it's good that this affects your ability to helping Palestinians. You shouldn't be helping them. Again, you are only rewarding the violence that is coming out currently out of Palestinian territories.
Yeah. So we have a comment in the chat. By the way, Stedman, I'll try to address the issue you're talking about later on. We have a comment. Europe is a continent, Daniel, not a country. But as far as I can see, this has not been verified by independent fact checkers. So we'll revisit this when it is. Somebody asks, what will the response be when Keir follows suit? It's highly likely that he follows suit in some ways. I don't think Keir Starmer is a is you know what do you call it? A person who initiates such big steps. I think he will follow it when he thinks it's the right time to follow it. So yeah, I don't know what the response will be then. Look, Britain, and this was something we considered doing an episode on, and we might. Britain decided that it is no longer going to sell weapons to Israel. Now, what that includes is things like, walkie-talkies and stuff. So it's not that Israel, needs British planes or anything. But this is a concern because Britain also looks at the Middle East, looks at rapists and murderers and savages who burn people alive, who hide behind their own people, who hide in hospitals and schools, and Britain says these are the people we should side with. So that is it should be terrifying to everybody in this country. Norway, I think, is so far gone on this. Remember, it was something like 10 days right before October 7th that the then foreign minister of Norway said that they support a one-state solution, that one state being basically everybody who lives in that area, that is the one state. So for Norway, and I don't know that they walked that back after October 7th when they saw that even with offense, the Palestinians find a way to murder Jews and to torture and rape and burn Jews alive because that is the only thing that is culturally of any significance to the Palestinians. This is a supposed nation that has been invented for the purpose of murdering all the Jews, or all the Jews that live in that area. So this is what Norway would like to see, and this is something Norway has been consistent on. So their response post October 7th, with the increase of funding to UNRWA, with the um, uh, uh, recognition of a Palestinian state, with the pushing for this idea of Netanyahu and Gallant being arrested. And by the way, they said they would arrest them if they land on Norwegian soil, which I don't think is happening anytime soon. But they also said to the International Court of Justice that the Oslo Accords should not be a reason not to issue these arrest warrants, which of course is not the case. The Oslo Accords are terrible. We do not advocate for that. I think we would not get. I'm sure we would not get October 7th or decades of rockets had there been no Oslo Accords. But the Oslo Accords say that this will be settled between the parties, not with the International Court of Justice. So, yeah, Norway is not basically is a country that Israel should take such measures against and should take more serious measures against. So they brought back the ambassador to Israel, but there's still an embassy. I think you have to say at some point, not just because of the country itself, because Norway isn't that significant a country, but in terms of showing to the rest of the world that you are actually standing behind your right to exist, which is what is being challenged. And being bold, we've spoken about the boldness in Israel's military actions in recent months. Being bold diplomatically is easier. It might not be that much easier because we don't know what happens when the cameras are off, but it is easier in the sense that when the U.S. wanted to place sanctions on one unit of the IDF, Israel fought back against that, and that was defeated. When Israel stands up for itself, uh, good people will stand with it, and it's good also in the sense that you see who doesn't stand with Israel and you see who they do end up standing with. So hopefully this is just the start. Hopefully there's a lot more of that from Israel in standing against such countries. Ireland is definitely a country that should be on that list. Spain as well, but I think Ireland probably a bit more. But yeah, anytime a country recognizes a Palestinian state, i.e., saying the people who live streamed themselves doing what they did on October 7th deserve to have their own state, Israel should say no and should say why not. Thank you, Wes, for the super chat. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. And thank you, Jeff, for the super chat.
So you mentioned that so the Norwegian foreign minister actually did, I think, like you mentioned, a week before October 7, I think on like September 29th or something. I think it was different than the one they currently have. In that time, it was these Norwegian names are killing me. Anniken Huitfeldt. And basically, she has said that the only way to resolve decades-long Israel-Palestine conflict is through a one-state solution with equal rights for all. And whenever I hear, especially the pro-Palestinian side, the pro-Hamas side, talk about the one-state solution, it either comes from like a large part of ignorance, like they actually have no idea what it means, or they actually are just looking for the quickest way to basically get rid of the Jews. Because again, like the idea of a one-state solution with equal rights for all, that sounds great on paper. I mean, that's what we want. I mean, we already like it's not unthinkable. You pretty much had the sort of similar problem when the first is the when basically there was the UN like the UN sort of like borders for the Israeli state. That one would be, so the first one would be like 50% Jewish, and I think like 40% Arab, and I think 10% something else, or like 10% something different. But basically, it would be almost basically 50-50 between Jews and different Arabs. And so after the war, there was some sort of a problem. You had a lot of Arabs. You had basically millions of Arabs who did live in a apartheid is applying to this is like crazy, but basically did live under military occupation. They didn't have the full Israeli citizenship, and it took decades until they were basically given the full Israeli rights. But we got to that point, so we know this can work. But again, we imagine if there was a one state right now, which again I think is pretty much the only way, the only end goal in a sense. But imagine if the people right now, the Palestinians living in the Gaza and the Palestinians living in the West Bank, if they were, right now there is a border, a pretty big border, and still you have Palestinians just going in and committing terrorist attacks, attacking Israel, and this is while they are basically like separated. Now imagine if this was one state, the amount of, and we kind of had that, when the uh yeah, I mean this whole idea, it's sort of like it's almost like idealistic to the point of like you actually have no idea what's going on. Like, yeah, if we had one nation across the world and everyone had equal rights and there was a world peace, yeah, that sounds great, but you're not dealing with anything on the reality. You're not dealing with the actual issues of what's going on. You're not even looking at what is the conflict. You are so separated from reality that, yeah, that statement is almost like pointless. Like, I support one state solution with equal rights for all. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So the partition plan was, two separate states, and then, for the Arabs, it was unacceptable that there would be a Jewish state, which is why they started the war, which is why, we now have the Palestinian refugees, i.e., people who started a war, lost it, and now demand that they be given victory, and that hasn't happened yet. And Arab Israelis, yeah, lived under a type of martial law at the beginning. And of course, if Israel had the same will to exist that it did in its early years, that would be the current situation in Gaza. Who was it here? Best Monster says they were given Gaza, and look what we got. It's a lot more than that, and which is why it's really appropriate that Norway has taken this stance. Appropriate in the sense that it's consistent, because yeah, the Oslo Accords were basically Israel's way of saying, okay, if what will get us peace is a Palestinian state with Palestinians controlling, ending the occupation, which was the goal of that agreement, then okay, we'll bring in. Or
Um,
can you guys at least hear us? Or
oh, I think we're back.
all right,
Yeah,
cool.
I think it.
Okay, good. We're back. So yeah, yeah, and then so it was immediately, let's kill as many kids as we can. That was the immediate response to show basically who the Palestinians are. And Israel continued to abide by the Oslo Accords, continued to give in, went to Camp David, offered the Palestinians whatever they wanted, and whatever they said they wanted. They said no. Arafat said no. And again, so it's not just Gaza. It was every step of the way. If Israel made steps towards Palestinian autonomy, Israel got dead Israelis. And again, look, it's very clear that that's what Norway wants. I think somebody in the chat said Norway hasn't gotten over Nazism or something to that effect. And I believe we did an episode titled something like what is it? Something to that effect, saying, yeah, the spirit, something like the spirit of Quisling is alive and well in Norway. Yeah, Norway um, is is fighting on the same side that it fought for in World War II, which is the side of let's exterminate the Jews.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, you mentioned the Oslo, and I think it is giving you a good amount of background by, yeah, realizing that the Oslo Accords, which again were horrible, the fact that again the Palestinian Authority was established, the fact that the PLO was recognized, I think was horrible. And I think the fact that it's named after the capital of Norway is I think very representative of that. Just quickly, I'd like to comment because someone in the chat says Ayn Rand Center. Would it interest you to know that the term libertarianism was originally coined by the communists? And so yeah, that's funny. It's actually true. It was basically the idea of libertarian communism, the sort of like anarchism. That's where the term originally stems from. The funny thing also is we are not libertarians, so I'm not sure who you're
Yeah, this
saying that
person is
to.
clearly enough of a regular viewer that he's been here for less than a week, which I think it's been less than a week since the last time we did an episode shitting on libertarians, which means we're due another one soon. But yeah, continue.
Um, so yeah, I maybe since we're running soon out of time, I would probably just summarize. I think again, I think this is good. Whenever something, whenever I see some response from Israel to, either politically, such as Norway, or militarily, I'm always glad. I like to see it, and I would like to see more. So I hope again this doesn't end here. I hope we'll see more things like that soon, and
Yeah, and we had a comment that was either deleted by the person or by YouTube, but it was and it had a Norwegian looking last name saying that yeah, this is an issue in Norway. I know people in Norway as well who are not on this side, of course, of the government policy, but this comment was saying that this is also in the school books, and that's a major issue. People grow up with this stuff, and even if they start thinking for themselves in some ways. There's a lot to undo when the people who are supposedly want to educate you so that you become a good person and ideally a person able to think for himself, what they actually are doing is indoctrinating you. I saw something on Twitter a few days ago, a video, I think it's from the US, of kids, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe younger, uh, doing a whole from the river to the sea chant. And this is something that clearly an adult uh, put this in their mouths and decided to video it and put it on Twitter. So they're proud of indoctrinating kids, and it really is
where was this
terrifying.
from? Like
Where
country.
I think it's from the US, but it because they sounded kind of American. Akira says that's old. Perhaps I just saw it recently. Perhaps there are several such videos, but yeah, it is scary. By the way, it's scary to me, even if people try to indoctrinate kids with ideas that I might agree with, because that is not what education is. You should teach kids to think for themselves, not what they supposedly should think, which of course is not thinking. Akira says this is from San Diego around November. So yeah, not that old, not that old. Yeah, November is recent enough. And again, this is terrifying stuff. This is stuff that we should talk about, and we will talk about. We also will talk about tomorrow, the whole idea of the soldiers abusing a Palestinian. Now, there was a video that came out, which I think pretty clearly makes the case against what the case was supposed to be, and yet it is used by some as evidence. There's a lot more. We're not going to get into it today. We'll get into it tomorrow. We'll get into something else tomorrow that I forgot. Uh, about the issue Stedman mentioned of the beginnings of videos, this is how it works with live streams. It's unfortunate. We don't want to start the video with 2 minutes of music because we know that when people see a video, like I wouldn't stick around for 2 minutes of music wondering when, if and when something else comes on. So some people recommended scrolling back and then playing it at 1.25 speed. We'll try to maybe talk slower at the beginning, so that will be a better option. But yeah, anyway, I'm sure Norway will get more episodes of this show. Unfortunately, they deserve it. And Daniel, any parting thoughts before we cross over to the reality show where we will be talking about Andrew Tate's appearance on Piers Morgan's show? Yeah. Well, we have some of those episodes as well, but I think it's worth watching. It's worth watching with us. Might be worth watching on its own as well. Parting
Uh,
thoughts?
I mean, I only say, there's things I dislike about Slovakia, but I still live, and things I like. Um, One thing I maybe appreciate is the fact that our education is so backward that we don't have the sort of like the modern ideas coming in yet. So, most of our maps still have the Soviet Union there. So we the Slovak education is definitely needed for more update. But on the other hand, I think if I try to remember back, most from I understand, I don't think there was really any indoctrination in my classroom, at least that I can remember. So I think that's one thing I would say that is positive. That yeah, it's good. You should never basically educate like actual ideas. It should be much more about basically just teaching children how to think. And I
Um,
think yeah.
Yeah, and just quickly, Anna says only two school books for secondary school has good enough information on Israel and the Middle East. Also, there is a report from Parliament of increased bullying against Jewish children from 2009. Yeah, I can only imagine where that situation is now. That is an inevitable result of this type of indoctrination, and I am sure that the people responsible for that indoctrination know it and want it. Yeah, some people are honestly mistaken. Some people are actually evil. And unfortunately, many of those people are in power. And some of those people are on Piers Morgan, which is the topic of the following show. So stick around. We will be back in 2 minutes with the reality show. We'll see you then.